thank you ever so much for agreeing to do this interview around grief and bereavement. I wonder if we could start with some information about yourself and your family, just to give a bit of context.
Yes, my name's Hannah Davis, and I live in Powys, and I'm a mother of two boys, one aged 5 and one aged 9. Unfortunately, my husband Mark was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4, that had spread to the liver in July 2020, so right in the middle of a pandemic, and very sadly passed away 7.5 weeks later in August 2020. So that's where the bereavement for myself and my children, family, friends, work colleagues, everyone who knew Mark, it obviously affected.
What was your what were your first steps to looking into sort of bereavement and grief services?
Actually, to be honest with you, my initial bereavement support started at diagnosis, and I'm a true believer that with kind of anybody with terminally ill illnesses, or short prognoses, or when their life changes because of an illness, you are bereaving for the life that you had. So I know from Mark's diagnosis, I got in touch with the Bracken Trust, who offered counselling support, and I was having weekly counselling support. Mark had one session, unfortunately, but would have continued if obviously his life continued. So for ourselves, that's when the bereavement support started. Also for my eldest son, unfortunately, Mark, very hands-on dad, was unable to be that hands-on dad anymore. And again, that bereavement for the life that we had started then. So he was unable to do the things that were normal to Freddie, of playing rugby together, going on bike rides, etc. So I got in touch with the team around the family, the TAF team with Children's Services, Powys Council, and started that off from Mark's diagnosis as well. The TAF team, they were able to offer wellbeing and emotional support. I was aware of this support and that they did offer this because I worked in children's services for a period of time. So therefore I knew how to access this support and to get a referral in place. But people who perhaps are unaware of that support that's available wouldn't know that it is there for their children. I described to my eldest child that the TAF support was like a human worry monster. So he was allocated a TAF worker who came into our lives at the most hardest time of our lives and came into our household as well. Obviously having to wear PPE, etc. at the time. But unfortunately, that became a bit of a norm, really, for us all if we did see people outside of our household in our household. And I just explained to them, him, that he would be able to speak to his TAF lead, or human worry monster, just about how he was feeling and the impact of obviously his dad being unwell that it had on him, and that he might just feel a bit more comfortable telling someone else rather than myself or his father or a family member or friend. So they did a lot of work around kind of feelings with him about, exploring what he was feeling and maybe, coaching him to realise why he was feeling it, but mainly reassuring him that it was very, very normal to feel what he felt.
Even running up to Mark's death, there would be a lot of practical matters. What kind of things, who did you need to tell, and how did you go about that?
Yes, well, leading up to obviously Mark's death, it was kind of, communicating with his work, with doctors, with consultants. You were very much, it was like a full-time job, to be honest with you, of keeping on top of Mark's treatment, his medication, and everyone like that. But the very practical matters after Mark's death was telling our bills, who we pay our bills to, letting again his work know, working out his pension, death in service. It took a lot of energy. I know that we have the Tell Us Once system, which is a government-led, which, you know, is fantastic, and it should be Tell Us Once, but the reality is it's not. When you're in that initial grief as well, after a death, it takes a lot of energy to contact all these individual companies, suppliers, account holders, to again retell your story, re-say that you know your husband has passed or a family member has passed, etc., which can be quite heart-wrenching on days. That you have to retell that story, and just the barriers as well of like, technology is fantastic, but I don't have Mark's face recognition. I didn't have his thumb recognition. I didn't know his passwords. So for me on the end of a phone to be able to try and evidence I am who I am and that Mark had actually passed was hard work. Again, you know, sending death certificates to people. So I feel there is a gap in the market for like an advocacy, a support network of someone to take that lead, or just to work with you of, right, who are your bills with? Let's go through that. Right, what's your account number? Have you got an old bill?
So your suggestion is that you almost need a sort of advocate allocated to you to deal with the business side, you know, so that you can be on, or not deal with it, but at least walk you through it.
Yes.
So that you're not being pulled by grief and practicality, which must be exhausting.
Yeah, and bearing in mind, I'm, you know, a young lady who's computer literate, where there's others out there who, you know, wouldn't know where to begin. I knew where to begin. I needed guidance on it, but there's others that would really benefit from that support.
I know you've talked to me about My Life, My Wishes.
I remember sitting in a meeting where the NHS came and presented the My Life, My Wishes document to us, or booklet. And it's all about putting down on paper what you want. What do you want in your last few days? What do you want after, with regards to, you know, funeral arrangements? But also in there is about your passwords, your accounts and everything. And maybe just to have them somewhere written down would have helped. Unfortunately, by the time we had that document given to us, Mark was unable to complete that document. Wills, you know, we've had a will, and thank goodness we did, because at least it gave us a bit of a footing of, you know, wishes, but it doesn't encompass everything. The best services that we have accessed and still access to this day are charities. So the Bracken Trust, they were fantastic, not only offering the counselling side of things, they were offering kind of nurse support, calling in and checking in on me weekly as well, but it could be more than that if that's what your need is. And as I say, you know, I was having counselling with them for up to the year of Mark's, after Mark's death, and it only got changed then to St Michael's Hospice, because they offered a trauma therapy, more counselling based service. They were fantastic as well when Mark was in the hospice, getting the social worker involved, because, you know, they didn't know if we were married, and, you know, she was really able to help me after Mark's prognosis with bereavement information for children. That I felt was a bit of a gap, really. Macmillan has a booklet which was very good, and it's about preparing children and teenagers around death, and it has kind of, you know, when there's the initial diagnosis, when like prognosis is, and around death, and about the honesty that kind of resonates with being honest with them about the situation. Within that booklet, there are golden nuggets that would go across the board with bereavement, full stop. Also then, as I say, about the TAF team, the team around the family, invaluable. But again, you know, only had that because of I knew about it. Not one professional who gave me a pack with leaflets in had that. And I felt that, you know, because I knew it was available, I was able to access it. But I do worry for families that don't know it's available.
And were there any other sort of examples of good practice or gaps that you feel?
A funeral. I was 37 years of age. I didn't know how to organise a funeral, but thank goodness our local funeral director handheld me. Again, we were in the middle of a pandemic. I wanted to give Mark the funeral that he deserved. How were we going to do that? But they were absolutely phenomenal, looking into all of the avenues and options available to us, and taking the lead on it. I know that rurally we can be at a disadvantage, but within small communities, by goodness, it has its advantages, and that was definitely one for us. There was books available as well, around grief, especially for my youngest child, who was 3 at the age when his father passed. He didn't know what death was, let alone that it had happened to his dad. He was learning still about feelings and trying to understand feelings. So I've had like a load of books off Amazon that were just fantastic, of putting it in child speak and in story that makes them understand. And from these books and reading them to my son, I've seen honest grief come through with him with, this is how I feel about Dad, which they're golden nuggets, heartbreaking, but thank goodness those resources are there. When you are in grief, it's really hard to remember about self-care. Maybe having someone to remind you. Everyone says, you know, oh, look after yourself, take care, but actually doing it is very, very different. Again, the Brecon Trust offer like holistic treatments as well, for carers. And, you know, I remember I've had a massage, I've had some Reiki, and I felt guilty having it because I didn't feel I deserved it. So it's that reassurance of you are being offered it because you do deserve it and you do need it. So I think that, you know, maybe something around self-care and the importance of it would be really, really valuable. I really feel that there is a gap of that kind of, you know, family support around bereavement and for children. So if something could kind of come together, that it's accessible. All of the professionals that we met, they were fantastic, but being a palliative care nurse, they didn't know what was available to us. And do they have the capacity to go out and find out what's available to people? So, you know, whether that is, you know, as I say, that lead of someone who can come in, say, what is it that you're experiencing, feeling? Well, this is available, this is available. Yes, I'll have that, or no, I'll be okay for that at the moment. But then that person knows that it is there if they do want to access it themselves. For myself, I have to, it's not just my grief, I've got my boys' grief to contend with every single day. And, you know, again, as I say, from my experience of working in children's services, I know the importance about being open and honest. But for others, that might not be happening for those young people. We know the effect that it has if grief is kept in, and the physical it can have, and the avenues and routes that young people could end up going down because they don't understand how they're feeling and not being able to let out how they're feeling in a safe place.
Finally, what would you like the impact of this interview to be?
I would love to see a family pack put together, whether actually it's a pack, because of, as we know, you can put a pack together and when it's printed out, it's out of date the next day, or it's a virtual one, you know, that then it can be kept up to date more often. But then again, there is that technology element that you are depriving those who aren't computer literate. That advocate, that's somebody that can just say, I can help you, this is what I can help you on. And whether it be financial support, whether it be going through those accounts and making sure that everything's up to date, the last thing that you want is red letters through your door. And the last thing you want as well is letters and phone calls for your deceased partner or family member, because they hurt again. So for me, that kind of advocate, service, support that's all encompassing, that has it all, that you can go to. It's like your open door to bereavement, I suppose.
Yeah, that's been such an excellent interview, Hannah, and I know you're always keen to sort of share the experience that you've had, and you know, we're just very grateful that you've spent the time with us today.
Oh, bless you. No, thank you very much for the opportunity. You know, finding meaning in Mark's death, of what comes out of it is making a change to someone else's life. And so it's part of my healing. So thank you very much.